How's it going, everyone? It's Kay Lumity here, and today we're going to be talking about an interesting visual novel. This is a visual novel called Outside the Door, and it is a psychological horror visual novel, and it is very interesting. It's an interesting concept, and I'm going to try my best not to spoil anything, but I will say that's going to be a little bit difficult, so but I'm going to try my best. But the premise of this game is you are playing a character who is an intern at this office who's basically judging people's lives. Someone comes in and you are judging their life, you're interviewing them, you're hearing about the things that they went through, and you have to basically decide your impression of the person that you're interviewing for each interview. So each interview you have to decide your impression, whether you had a good impression or a bad impression of the individual that you are interviewing. And the conversations that they have range from kind of interesting to kind of meh, but I will say they do wrap up pretty well in the end, and they do a good job of putting a bow on the entire story. And whenever a visual novel is, the genre of game that you're playing, it's important to have that story come together very well. And I'm glad that it did. I think that it came together very well. I think the story is pretty darn good, and I think the twist was better than I expected. I didn't expect the twist to be quite what it was, so I'm kind of happy with the way that it ended up. The dialogue can be a bit hit or miss in this game just because it doesn't have the best translation. It's not nearly as bad as people made it out to sound. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, this is an awful translation. I don't think it's that bad, but it's not perfect by any means. And sometimes I feel like there's just a lot of unneeded back and forth between the interviewer and the person being interviewed. I just feel like sometimes they're at each other's throat a bit too much, but once the story goes on, it kind of makes more sense, and I kind of understand why they were doing that. And there's still some mystery to this game. The other part of this game is that you have these little survey questions almost. It's basically paperwork that you get at the end of each interview, and you need to listen to what the characters are saying. That way you can take what information they're giving you and you can put it into the computer. It will give you multiple choices that you can put into the computer, and you just need to make sure that you're picking the right one for the interview that you just had. So you have that, and then that's when it will ask you, okay, what's your impression of the character that you were interviewing? Do you think that they were a good person? Do you have a good impression of them? Or do you have a negative impression of them? So it's important to keep that in mind and to pay attention to those keywords too, because those keywords that you're typing in will matter later on in the story, and they'll kind of help you put things together a little bit better. Honestly, I was starting to not like this game about halfway through because I was just like, okay, where are you going with this? Because it kind of felt like the conversations were going nowhere, and I was just like, I don't really understand what's going on now. The character starts going a little bit back and forth, it feels like, and I don't know. I thought that it started becoming a bit too slow. It got a little bit too long in the tooth. But it did wrap up very nicely, and I think a lot of the details that it may seem like it's over explaining end up really needing to be there for this game to wrap everything up so nicely like it did. This game had actually a very phenomenal ending. At least the ending was phenomenal. I wouldn't want to make the other decision. I'm glad I made the decision that I did. But overall, this is a very interesting game. It's very unique in its story idea. I have never played another game ever like this, so definitely a unique story, and it's a story that could really only be told in this way. So I really enjoyed it, and I think it's perfect for the visual novel format. And some other great things about this game is, first of all, its art style. Love the way it looks. The actual art design is fantastic. It's very minimalist. There's not a whole lot of characters in this, but the art style does look good in this game. The music in the background also is very good, and you're going to be hearing it for a long time because, it's basically the one song. However, I will say at least they picked something kind of calm and, something that's just relaxed so you can read through the story, and it just kind of is a nice tone throughout the entire game, and it sets up a nice tone. There's some jump scares, I guess you could call them, in this game, but they don't really work on me. I don't think I'm desensitized to jump scares. I just don't think that they did anything like too scary to make me jump or anything, right? There are scares, there are weird things that happen to the characters on screen, and you have a little computer next to you where you can write down things that happen in the cases. and you can pick, whether you had a good first impression or a bad first impression of the person that you were talking to. And sometimes weird things will pop up on that computer. Like there's one point where like an evil scarecrow looking thing pops up on it, and it doesn't really scare me. It didn't really do anything too creepy. I think where I guess you could call creepiness. I wouldn't even call it creepiness, but the horror aspect of this game comes in the fact that it is definitely a paranormal story. And the way that it's told, you can definitely tell that there's some sort of paranormal events going on here, and it does a good job of kind of making you wonder like what's going on. And I like that at the very beginning of the game, it lets you ask a question. You get to ask the person on the radio one question, and I don't know what the answers you get for every question, but the one question I was just asked the character on the radio, is my character dead? And I like the answer that it gave me. I'm not going to spoil it, but it actually makes sense now that I've played through the entire game and I've seen the ending, I've seen everything. It makes sense what the person said to me. So overall, this was a fantastic story. Did not expect it to be. During the middle, it started becoming a bit of a slog. I was just like, I don't know about this. I felt like it started trauma dumping on me a little bit too much, and I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you just talking about all the bad things that happened? But then things started making sense, and it came together really nicely. The only thing I will say is that I do think it handled some situations not so great, some really serious topics. I felt like they handled it a bit too lightly, and those are some situations that you should probably have a bit more care into. But I just think that it's something that you need to kind of be wary of whenever you're writing really serious topics. There's some serious topics in this game, and whenever you're talking about anything like that, you need to be very respectful about it, and I don't know if they did the best job of being respectful about it. That's what I will say. But I still enjoyed this game. I think it's a really fun game, and if you can handle some dark subject matter, some dark topics, I think that this is a really interesting game to pick up. It's a cool story. It's one that I've never seen before, and it works perfect for the visual novel format. It's a short story. You can play through it in an hour and a half and play through the entire story, and I definitely think that this is a unique experience, and I'm glad that I played through this. This is a really cheap game too. It's only $2, so for that price, I think it's definitely worth a playthrough and just to check it out. But thank you guys for watching. Go check Outside the Door on the PC, and I'll talk to you in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye bye.